My family demanded $1,200 of my college savings to help my sister. But when I discovered it was all a lie and refused, my parents kicked me out, blocked me from their lives, and what happened next left them speechless. I'm 18 years old. I just graduated high school a few months ago, and I need to tell this story because it basically destroyed my relationship with my parents and changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I guess I should start by explaining how things were before everything went to hell, because honestly, I never saw coming what happened. Like, not in a million years would I have imagined that my own parents were going to do this to me. I grew up in a small neighborhood where everyone knows each other. You know, one of those places where your neighbor knows if you graduated before your grandmother does. That kind of community. My dad, Anthony, had a normal job until like 2 years ago. Nothing special, but it paid the bills. My mom, Michelle, was always a stay-at-home mom, which is fine, but it meant all the financial pressure was on my dad. I have an older sister, Nicole, who's 22, and the relationship with her was always complicated. When we were kids, she was basically a bully to me. Like she made my life miserable. And my parents always defended her with that whole, it's just sibling stuff thing, minimizing everything. When she left for college like 4 years ago, things got better simply because she wasn't in the house. But we were never close, not at all. The thing is, when I was 16, I started working. Not because my parents forced me or anything, but because I wanted my own money. And also I knew college was going to be expensive, and I didn't want to depend completely on them. I got a job at a retail store first, then at a restaurant where the tips were better, and basically I worked as much as I could without neglecting school. My parents were proud. Like they always told me I was very responsible and mature for my age, and I felt good about that. For 2 years, I saved practically every penny I earned. I mean, obviously I spent some on hanging out with friends and stuff, but most of it I religiously put away in a savings account I opened, specifically for college. By the time I graduated high school, I had like $8,000 saved, which I know isn't a fortune, but for me it was everything. It was my ticket to be able to go to a good university without being drowning in debt until I'm 40. Meanwhile, my dad decided like 2 years ago that he wanted to be his own boss. He quit his job and started a business. I'm not going to get into details about what kind of business because it doesn't matter. But basically, he needed initial investment, and my uncle Samuel, my dad's older brother, lent him a good amount of money. At first, everything seemed to be going well, or at least that's what my parents said. But then COVID hit, and everything went to hell. The business started having serious problems. There were no customers. Expenses kept being the same, you can imagine. My parents were never completely honest about how bad things were. Like it was always like, yeah, it's tough, but we're gonna get through it, That forced optimism that adults use when they don't want to worry their kids, but they're actually panicking. Nicole graduated from college a few months ago, in May, I think, and she decided to stay in the city where she studied because she got a job there. My parents were super proud, making a huge deal on Facebook about their college graduate daughter and all that. She rented an apartment and seemed to be doing fine, or so I thought. The truth is, Nicole and I practically didn't talk. Maybe a text message every 2 months like happy birthday or Merry Christmas. That kind of superficial communication you have with relatives you don't get along with, but you're not officially fighting with either. Everything exploded like 3 months ago, end of July. I was in my room one afternoon, I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, when my parents called me to the living room. They were both sitting on the couch with those serious faces that parents put on when they're going to have an important conversation with you. And I honestly thought they were going to talk about my college because I had just been accepted to an out-of-state school, and we were in the process of figuring out all the financial and logistical stuff. I sat down, and my dad started with, "This whole family needs to support each other in difficult times," thing, and that Nicole was going through a tough time because she didn't have enough to pay her rent this month. I was like, okay. Sorry to hear that, but I didn't understand what it had to do with me. Then my mom dropped the bomb. She said they needed me to give them $1,200 from my savings to help Nicole with her rent. I sat there processing what they had just said because I literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them no, that money was for my college, that I had worked 2 years to save it, and that I wasn't going to give it to Nicole to pay her rent. My dad got super defensive immediately, saying that family is more important than, money. That Nicole is my sister and I should want to help her. All that classic emotional manipulation. I told him I understood things were tough, but why couldn't Nicole get a second job or move to a cheaper place? And also, why did I have to sacrifice my savings when she had never done anything for me? Like, quite the opposite. She made my life miserable for years. My mom started crying, which I should have seen coming because she always uses tears as a weapon when she doesn't get her way, and said she was disappointed in me, that she couldn't believe I was being so selfish and ungrateful after everything they had done for me. And I was like, ungrateful? Seriously? I reminded them that I had worked and saved that money on my own, that it wasn't their money, and that the reason I had done it was precisely because I knew they weren't going to be able to pay for my entire college. The argument escalated super fast, voices getting louder and louder, my dad saying that as long as I lived, under his roof I had to follow his rules, and me responding that didn't include stealing my savings to give them to my sister who doesn't even talk to me. Then my dad said something that left me frozen. He said that if I wasn't going to help the family, then I should leave the house, that he didn't want to have such a selfish son living with him. My mom backed him up completely, like nodding and adding that maybe it was better if I learned what the real world was like if I was going to be so stubborn. I was in total shock. I mean, were they kicking me out of the house for not giving them $1,200? I couldn't process that this was actually happening. I told them, okay, fine, I'm leaving. And I went up to my room shaking with pure rage and, honestly, I was also scared because I had no idea where I was going to go. I called my Uncle Samuel, my dad's brother, and explained what had happened. He and his wife, Dorothy, were always good to me. Like at Christmas and birthdays, they always treated me really well. And I knew my uncle didn't let himself get manipulated by my dad like other relatives did. I told him everything, without omitting details, and he was furious. He told me to pack my things, that he was going to pick me up in an hour, and that I could stay with them as long as I needed. I filled 2 suitcases with my clothes and important stuff, grabbed my laptop and documents, and waited. When my uncle arrived, my parents tried to talk to him, but he basically told them they had no right to kick their son out of the house for not wanting to give away his savings, that it was ridiculous and shameful, and that he was going to give me a place to stay. My dad was red with anger, yelling something about how Samuel didn't understand the situation and to mind his own business, but my uncle signaled for me to leave, and we left. The first few days at my uncle and aunt's house were weird. Like I felt grateful but also humiliated to be there. Like I was a burden. They were incredible. Honestly, they treated me like I was their own son and made it clear I could stay as long as I needed. But I was filled with rage. I couldn't stop thinking about what my parents had done, how they had kicked me out like I was nothing to them after 18 years. And the worst part is, I started getting messages from relatives asking me what had happened, because obviously my parents were telling their version of the story, where I was the selfish villain who refused to help his sister in a time of need. So I did something I probably shouldn't have done, but at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. I wrote a super detailed post on Facebook explaining exactly what had happened. I told how I had saved money working since I was 16, how my parents demanded I give $1,200 to Nicole, how I refused because it was my money for college, and how they kicked me out of the house for that. But I also included context about my parents' financial situation, like how my dad's business had failed, how they owed money to my uncle, how they were struggling financially but refused to admit it or seek help in a reasonable way. I made it public because I wanted everyone to see the truth, not the manipulated version my parents were telling. And honestly, I also wanted to humiliate them a little. I wanted them to feel some of the shame I was feeling. The post exploded. And when I say exploded, I mean it had like 200 comments in a few hours. Most people were on my side, saying my parents were completely wrong, that they had no right to demand my money, that kicking me out of the house was abuse. Several relatives commented openly criticizing my parents, like cousins and uncles saying they were ashamed of their behavior, how dare they treat their own son like that. But there were also people who attacked me, saying I was airing the family's dirty laundry in public, that it was disrespectful, and that family problems should be solved privately. That mentality that the family's reputation is more important than the truth. My parents called me furious, Like my dad was yelling so much, I had to move the phone away from my ear. He demanded I delete the post immediately, that I was destroying the family's reputation, that I was embarrassing everyone, and basically threatened me with, I don't know what consequences, if I didn't take it down. My mom was crying in the background, saying, how could I do this to them? That she had raised me better than that. I told them maybe they shouldn't have kicked me out of the house if they didn't want people to know what they did, and I hung up. But after a few days, I started feeling bad. Not for my parents, but for all the negative attention I was bringing. My uncle suggested I delete it. Not because my parents deserved it, but because at the end of the day, I was the one who was going to have to live with the consequences of exposing the family like that. And he was right. I deleted it like a week after the initial drama. But the damage was already done. Everyone had already seen the post and already had their opinion formed. Like 2 more weeks passed and things were weird, like my parents weren't talking to me at all. I was adapting to living with my uncle and aunt, and the start date for my college was getting closer and closer. One night, I was helping my Aunt Dorothy with dinner when she asked me if I had talked to Nicole. Lately, I told her no, that Nicole and I basically didn't have a relationship. Then she told me something that left me completely confused. She told me she had talked to Nicole a few days ago, and that Nicole was confused about why I was angry with her. Because she had paid her rent without a problem. I was like, wait, what? What do you mean she paid her rent? If all this drama was because supposedly she couldn't pay it. My aunt looked at me with a weird expression and said that Samuel had given money to Nicole for rent like 2 weeks before all this. And happened that Nicole had asked them for help directly, and they decided to help her. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I couldn't process what I had just heard. My parents asked me for money for Nicole's rent when Nicole had already received money from my uncle and aunt, which meant that either my parents didn't know Nicole already had the money sorted out, or they knew and were lying to me to get money for something else, probably for their own debts. I asked my aunt if she was sure about the dates, and she said yes, that it was definitely before I had the fight with my parents. My uncle came into the kitchen at that moment and confirmed everything. Said that Nicole had called them desperate, saying she didn't have money for rent, so they sent her the money by transfer, and that Nicole had even sent them a message thanking them and confirming she had paid her rent on time. I was so angry, I didn't even know what to do with all that rage. My parents had kicked me out of the house, had destroyed our relationship, all for money that wasn't even for what they said it was for. I felt betrayed at a level I can't even explain. Like, one thing is having a strong fight with your parents over differences of opinion, but this was something completely different. This was pure manipulation. I decided I needed to talk to Nicole directly, because if my parents had lied to me, maybe they had also lied to her. I looked up Nicole's number and sent her a message saying we needed to talk. She responded surprisingly quickly, asking about what, and I told her I needed to know exactly what she had told our parents about her rent. She called me like 5 minutes later, and her voice sounded confused and a little defensive. I explained what had happened, how our parents had asked me for money for her rent, how they kicked me out when I refused, everything. There was a long silence on the other side of the line, and then she said, "Oh, my God, Aaron. I didn't know anything about that." She told me that yes, she had had problems with rent that month because her job had paid her late, but that she had asked for help directly from our uncle and aunt, and they had sent her the money immediately, like 2 weeks before all this exploded with me. She said she never asked our parents for money because she knew they were having financial problems, and that she had no idea our parents had asked me for money using her name. I asked her if our parents knew that Uncle Samuel had given her money, and Nicole said yes, that she had told them because she was grateful and thought they'd like to know her problem was solved, which meant my parents definitely knew Nicole already had her rent covered when they asked me for the money. I told Nicole about the Facebook post and all the family explosion that followed, and she was like in shock. She said, our parents had called her a few weeks ago, super angry, saying I was causing problems and embarrassing the family, but that they hadn't given, and her specific details of what had happened. They just said, I had refused to help her when she needed it, and that I had left the house being dramatic. She had believed their version because, they're our parents, and she assumed they were telling the truth. We talked for like 2 hours that night, which is ironic because it was the longest conversation we'd had in like 5 years. Nicole apologized to me for how she had treated me when we were kids, said she knew she had been horrible to me and that she regretted it but didn't know how to fix things after so much time. She also told me things I didn't know, like that our parents had been super controlling with her during college, that they constantly compared her to me and told her she needed to be more responsible like me, which surprised me because I always thought she was the favorite. She told me, yes, they always defended and protected her when we were kids, but when she grew up, it became different, like they expected more from her than they expected from me. It was weird hearing her perspective because I had never considered that maybe she was also dealing with the manipulation and toxic expectations from our parents in ways I didn't see. At the end of the conversation, we agreed we were going to try to rebuild our relationship as siblings, that it wasn't going to happen overnight, but that we both wanted to try. We also decided that Nicole was going to confront our parents about the lies, because she was as angry as I was about how they had used her in all this. I told her to be careful because our parents clearly had no problem lying and manipulating, but she was determined. Nicole called them the next day and basically asked them directly why they had asked Erin for money for her rent when they knew she had already paid it thanks to Uncle Samuel. According to what she told me later, our parents tried to act confused at first, saying it must have been a misunderstanding. But when Nicole pressed them, my dad admitted that yes, they knew her rent was covered, but they thought I should contribute anyway because family supports each other. Nicole asked them, then what the money they asked from me was really for. And my dad got defensive, saying that was none of her business, that it was their finances and Nicole had no reason to get involved. My mom started with her usual tactic of crying and saying their own children were turning against them, that after everything they had sacrificed for us, this is how we repaid them. Nicole told me she made it very clear to them that what they did was wrong, that they had lied and manipulated both of us, and that she wasn't going to be part of their games. My dad yelled at her that she was ungrateful just like me, and Nicole just hung up. She sent me a message later saying she was going to take distance from our parents for a while, that she needed to process all this, and that she definitely wasn't going to let them keep using her name or her situation to manipulate people. Now, fast forward to like 3 weeks ago. I finally started college. I moved to the state where my school is, got a dorm on campus with the money I had saved plus some financial aid I received. The transition was weird. Like I was excited to start this new chapter, but I was also processing all the family drama I had left behind. I tried to contact my parents before leaving, because I don't know. I guess part of me still hoped that maybe they would apologize or that we could fix things somehow. I sent them a message saying I was going to leave for college and that I'd like to talk to them before. They didn't respond. I tried calling them and they sent me straight to voicemail. Then I realized they had blocked me everywhere. Phone, Facebook, Instagram, everything. I'm not going to lie, that hurt. Like it hurt a lot. They're my parents, the only parents I'm going to have, and they chose to cut me completely out of their lives instead of admitting they did. Something wrong. I was like super depressed for 2 days, questioning myself if maybe I had overreacted, if maybe I should have handled things differently. But then I talked to my Uncle Samuel, and he reminded me that I didn't do anything wrong, that defending my savings and refusing to be manipulated wasn't something I should feel guilty about. He's right. I know it logically, but emotionally it's complicated, you know? Nicole and I have been talking more often now, like we text each other every couple of days. Nothing super deep yet, but it's progress. She also made the decision to distance herself from our parents for now. She told me that when she tried to talk to them about this whole thing, after confronting them initially, they basically tried to manipulate her into turning against me, telling her I was the one destroying the family and that she needed to choose a side. Nicole told them she wasn't going to do that what they did was objectively wrong, and that until they apologized and took responsibility for their actions, she wasn't going to have a close relationship with them. My dad told her she was making a mistake, that she was going to regret it, but Nicole stood firm. The weirdest thing about all this is that I discovered things about my family I never knew. My Aunt Dorothy told me a few days ago that she had been helping Nicole financially throughout college without anyone else knowing, sending her money for books and food when Nicole told her she was short on money. My parents never knew about that because Nicole was afraid that if they found out they were going to get angry or feel humiliated. And it turns out my Uncle Samuel had been lending money to my dad for the business way before the big investment, like small loans over years that my dad never mentioned and probably never fully paid back. Basically, my parents have been depending on my uncle and aunt's generosity for years while maintaining this facade that everything was fine, and when things finally got out of control, instead of asking for help honestly, they decided to manipulate me to get money. Here I am now, in my college dorm, trying to focus on my classes and building this new life that took me so much work to be able to have. My parents aren't part of it, and honestly, I don't know if they ever will be again. Part of me misses them. I miss the idea of what I thought was my family, but the reality is that family probably never existed the way I thought it did. My relationship with Nicole is improving slowly, which is something I never thought I'd say. Like 6 months ago, we couldn't be in the same room without fighting, and now we're having real conversations about real things. My uncle and aunt continue to be incredible. They call me every week to see how I'm doing. They sent me a care package the other day with snacks and a super sweet note that honestly made me cry a little. I think what's hardest for me is accepting that my parents chose their pride and their need to keep up appearances over their relationship with me. I would have understood if they had told me the truth from the beginning. Like if they had said, hey, we're in a terrible financial situation. The business is failing. We need help. We could have had an honest conversation about what was possible and what wasn't. But instead they decided to lie, manipulate, use Nicole as an excuse, and when I confronted them about it, they decided to kick me out and then cut me completely out of their lives instead of admitting they were wrong. That's what I can't easily forgive. Not the difficult financial situation or the fact that they needed help, but the lies and manipulation and the willingness to sacrifice their relationship with me to avoid feeling embarrassed or admitting they failed. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe someday my parents will realize what they did and will want to fix things. Maybe not. Maybe Nicole and I will manage to build a real and healthy sibling relationship. Or maybe this is just a temporary moment of alliance in the middle of chaos and eventually we'll drift apart again. The only thing I know for sure is that I'm not going to let this situation ruin my future. I worked too hard and sacrificed too much to get here to allow family drama to sink me. My money is still in my savings account. I'm paying for my education the way I always planned. And I'm building my life on my own terms. And if that makes my parents think I'm selfish or ungrateful, well, I guess that's their problem, not mine.